Nigel Farage will be banned from the Conservative Party no matter who replaces Rishi Sunak after Mel Stride joined his 5 leadership rivals in dismissing a future deal with the Reform leader.
Absolutely not. I made that very clear. So no deals with Nigel Farage. Look, Nigel Farage wants to destroy the Conservative Party.
So he joined his fellow Tory leadership hopefuls in slamming Mr Farage for his commentary before the Southport riots.
I think his remarks, let me put it like this, were deeply unhelpful to those officers that were then having to go out and deal with the consequence of the rioting.
This is not leadership. It is deeply irresponsible and dangerous.
And he needs to decide, is he a politician, a serious politician, or is he a social media content creator?
Lee Anderson joins me now, Reform UK MP. Lee, thank you very much. Look, is Nigel being banned from joining the Conservative Party a little bit like me being banned from Papua New Guinea? I didn't want to go anyway.
Well, I'll put it this way, Patrick. I don't suppose that Nigel's actually losing any sleep over this. And I look at some of my ex-colleagues, which are classed as friends as well, a little bit disappointed with them, Patrick. Look at the whole of I think there's 6 of them in the leadership contest. Me, personally, I've got a bigger majority than all of them, apart from Kemi, but I've got a bigger vote share than Kemi. So they need to look at people like me in places like Ashfield, in the Red Wall, and look to see why I won my seat, why Nigel won his seat, and Richard and James and Rupert, and look at these people like James Cleverly, like Mel Stride, who I think his majority is about 200 at the moment. These are people that nearly lost their seats, and they're sort of dictating the pace. They're having a go at Nigel. And you know what? If they want to win back those 4 or 5, 6 million Conservative voters that they lost at the last election, maybe, just maybe, Patrick, they should be listening to people like Nigel Farage instead of dissing him.
I do wonder, though, Lee, whether or not there is something to be said about should Nigel actually be more open to doing a deal, right? Because, failing that, it looks as though the Tories will be split forever. Reform, might not really ever form enough to have a majority. And that does perpetuate the idea that we're just going to continue to have a Labour government. And already so far we've seen things like, big public sector pay rises, some quite concerning stuff when it came to, comments about social media, etc. from Keir Starmer. So should Nigel maybe be trying to pave the way for a bit of a reunion?
Well, look, the last 2019 election, when I first got elected, Patrick, I think Nigel stood down in about 100 seats. Did stand down in Ashfield, by the way, and he did that to allow Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party to get an 80-seat majority. And what happened after the election, not so much as a thank you from the Conservative Party, I think that was pretty poor form on behalf of the Conservative Party. They should have reached out to Nigel and thanked him for what he did. So why on earth should Nigel do a deal now? Look, we're on the uppers. We're really on the way up now, the Reform Party. Our membership has gone from 20,000 when I first joined up to nearly 80,000. We're definitely going to win council seats next time. The momentum is with the Reform Party. And if anybody's reaching out, it should be the Conservative Party.
Do you think most people out there in the real world could actually pick Mel Stride out of a lineup?
I couldn't pick him out. I mean, I have to look twice at him sometimes to remind myself who he actually is. I was a member of Parliament for 3 years before I knew who Mel Stride was. So I think he's a bit rich coming from there. He's a good guy. He's a decent guy. But you shouldn't be talking about Nigel Farage like this. Nigel Farage, is the most popular politician, I think, in this country at the moment, and definitely the most influential politician in my lifetime. So when the Conservative Party start dissing him, as they're doing right now, they're doing themselves no favours at all. There's lots of Conservative voters who abandoned the party just a month ago at the general election. The Conservative Party needs to try and win them back, and they won't do that by having a pop at Nigel.
Well, this is it. I mean, look, I'm sure that they would say, well, actually, the way that we're going to win the next election is to try to gather ground in the centre, and maybe if they can pinch people from Labour, etc., and they obviously have some kind of strategy there, one would assume. But, Lee, I just want to whiz us on to something else now, because Number 10 has admitted that Keir Starmer is now expecting more boat crossings this summer after the number of arrivals since he took office has already reached nearly 5,000. GB News has just exclusively revealed, by the way, there's been a major escalation in migrant violence in northern France. Locals are actually being targeted by these illegal migrants now. Lee, the Prime Minister needs to get a handle on this fast, doesn't he? Because as it currently stands, there's a kind of a junkyard of small boats at the moment in Dover. I mean, we could line them up across the channel and let them just walk across, couldn't we?
Yeah, well, listen, Patrick. The violence in the camps in Calais is not a new thing. I was told this when I went last year, as you probably know. And look what's happening in Calais. Actually, they've got gang warfare. You've got the Sudanese fighting against each other, probably tooled up at the same time. And what happens then, Patrick? They jump in a boat. They picked up by our border force. They then escorted. These thugs are escorted into our waters, put into hotels, put through the asylum process. And then granted asylum. The ones that aren't are going to stop here anyway. And then you know what? In a few years' time, we'll be scratching our heads, thinking to ourselves, why are these people running around committing crimes? Let me tell you this, Patrick. If you import a third world culture where life is very cheap, you're going to get third world behaviour on our streets in Great Britain. And Parliament has got blood on its hands.
Well, this is what I was going to ask you, really. I know you've just put that in very strong terms there, Lee, but what would reform really do? I know there's the turning back the boats policy and stuff, but I just wonder, in practical terms, when you see certain areas around the country that seem to be very pro-refugees welcome, could reform not maybe try to pass some kind of policy where that's where the Channel migrants go and live?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it's a sensible point you're raising, Patrick. We could say to all these Labour MPs, all these lovies that say, illegal migration is a good thing. I tell you what, every single constituency where you've got a Labour MP, send the illegal migrants there to resettle. And I tell you what, most of them Labour MPs at the next election would lose their seats.
OK, all right. Well, look, Lee, thank you very much for coming on. That is Lee Anderson there as a Reform UK MP. Hey, look, many people will disagree with him and say, no, we do need to have the refugees welcome lot, don't we? We do indeed need to have a fairer system of distributing them around the country, and Keir Starmer's got a plan. We just haven't had time to see it yet.